situations they go through become difficult, so it would only be right if the theme that follows them is actually theirs, right? I think that this leitmotif can tell us about the future is that whenever you hear this leitmotif in the game, Kris's presence isn't too far behind. So keep your ears open, because the game might give us clues as to what we can learn more about Kris.
With the release of chapters 3 and 4, I was so ready and excited to see more of this leitmotif pop up. With a whole chapter that takes place in Kris's house, surely the leitmotif that had taken a back seat in chapter 2 would be front and center here. So let's see those new tracks with the leitmotif! What? Well, shit, I guess this is just a chapter 4 soundtrack analysis video. Before we start the analysis, though, a few quick housekeeping things. Big spoilers for chapters 3 and 4, even though we're not covering songs off the chapter 3 soundtrack, there are still the dastardly life motifs from that chapter that pop up, so I gotta cover all my bases. Second order of business, it's okay if you disagree with me, or you don't like my analysis. It's okay if you don't even like what other people have to say on this topic. Just don't be rude, play nice. We're all just here to have fun after all, so keep that in mind, yeah? And lastly, the part 1 of this video, which you should definitely watch if you haven't yet, then come back to this one pretty please, is a year old and my cat mascot is almost 2. I think it's time for an update. Alright, that's so much better. Now we can get into the analysis. So chapter 3 is still important to this video, so we need to address something before it gets to the actual songs. Boo if you like, but it's important. To me. Hey, so Raise Up Your Bat was crazy. Besides being a really fun minigame, it also made me lose my mind monumentally because, oh my god, the Lost Girl leitmotif reappearance, but also, oh my god, just straight up references Don't Forget. Interestingly enough, there's only one song that contains both the Lost Girl and Don't Forget leitmotif, which we'll get into a bit later. This feels a bit like a bombshell to have a direct reference to the song's lyrics in an important part of the game, but considering that the leitmotif is found in a ton of other songs that contain other leitmotifs, I suppose as of right now, it isn't too terribly important to this video. Maybe Des will become our ally in chapter 6 when we fight WD Gaster or something. But in all seriousness, this leitmotif is becoming more plentiful the further we go, and this one being a straight up diegetic track at that is something to keep our eyes on. I mean, with the Gumball Machine doing all of that spooky, eerie stuff with the acoustic version of Lost Girl, it's bound to be tied to December without a doubt. But until it becomes relevant to this leitmotif, we'll just put a pin in it for now. Up first, our brand new track featuring the leitmotif, and it's an arrangement of Don't Forget. What the hell, sure. Despite the simplicity of it, there's some interesting implications that come with this track, mainly the religious context it's put into here. There are actually lyrics that are being sung along with this track, which directly references both heaven and Deltarune, in all caps. The way that heaven is referenced in this song seems reminiscent of Christianity, though the game has gone out of its way to explain that the two are uniquely different. It's likely that the heaven they are referring to is less of an afterlife and more akin to the angel's heaven, which was foretold in the prophecy, which we still don't know all that much about. It seems like something that will occur after the roaring, or maybe during, and that the night kind of wants it, but also doesn't, which is strange to say the least. Beyond that we have, oh, hi, Don't Forget reference, and the Tale of Deltarune. Considering that Susie nor Kris have ever seemed to have heard of Rousey's prophecy, the tale is probably something completely different. Also, the phrasing is different. It's a tale, a story of sorts, as opposed to seeing the future, which, you know, a prophecy would imply. Something tells me we're going to be learning more about this tale in the future, since, you know, it has the title of the freaking game here. I actually covered this track in my last video, but I suppose an update couldn't hurt. Yes, this pairs up with the hometown leitmotif as established ahead of time, which, you know, of course, it's hometown, but it's actually worth noting that we hear these two tracks during the day and the afternoon, and actually not at night, when, you know, it makes sense for someone to be with you in the dark. Since it's one of the few Light World tracks, it might show that our allies aren't only in the Dark Worlds, but we did already know that. Perhaps it just ties in more with that theme of friendship and hope and close bonds. Once again, it has Toby's signature sneaking a leitmotif at the end of the song when you least expect it. Well, I guess it's more expected now that he's done it a couple times. Given how friendship also has this leitmotif in it, I'm not at all surprised that the leitmotif pops up here again. What is interesting is that this is actually the first time this leitmotif shares a track with the Lost Girl one. While it could mean that Noelle is becoming a stronger ally to us, I think it's also not a coincidence that only after we hear Raise Up Your Bat that the leitmotifs start sharing a song. Snippets of Don't Forget don't show up in Noelle's house. It's just here, when Noelle nor Des are even present. So what does this mean? Well, it could just serve as a hint to a greater connection between Noelle, Des, and Kris, and perhaps we'll see them together in a dark world. Or maybe this has more to say about Susie than Kris. If this track was about Kris and their friends, it doesn't make sense to me why the pre-established theme for Susie isn't here. Along with Kris and Noelle's strange relationship, the Don't Forget and Lost Girl leitmotifs have always been their own separate things before this point. But something these motifs do have in common is that Noelle is Susie's friend too, and that no matter what, us and Kris will always have Susie's back. Hell, she was the first person to ever be with us in a dark world. Probably, if I had to guess, I have a feeling this main melody will show itself again. Probably at the festival, since it's an event that everyone is going to attend, especially all of Kris and Susie's Lightworld friends. Besides being incredibly catchy and snazzy, there's a lot to this song. More than what meets the eye. More than what meets the ear? You get the picture. For starters, despite the song sounding similar to My Castle Town, the naming scheme has actually changed, and it has 2 additional leitmotifs smuggled into it. Damn. And the naming scheme definitely caught my attention when listening to the Deltarune soundtrack for the first time. Originally, in the Spamton Sweepstakes, this song was called My Funky Town, mirroring the track before it. But now it's simply called Castle Funk. I think this represents a bit more of a shift away from your importance in the castle town. As the town grows and more people are added to it, we see more people congratulating Kris and being appreciative of their hard work, which really is the hard work of us, the player for the most part. But it makes sense, doesn't it? Most of the denizens of the castle town don't even know we exist. Or the Deltarune team is trying to avoid a copyright case. But anyways, the other 2 motifs that show up in this song are, 1, the legend, of course, seeing as when you get back to the castle town is in Chapter 4, which is called Prophecy. And the previous 2 songs this area had this leitmotif. It's really not surprising that this leitmotif is here. Same with Tenna's theme. Chapter 3 had this motif bobbing in and out of the soundtrack, so there isn't really anything crazy about this song being in our new castle town, with the addition of the TV world workers. Or former workers, rather. While these 2 aren't surprising, the inclusion of the Don't Forget leitmotif is. In the previous tracks for Castle Town, being Empty Town and My Castle Town, it wasn't there. It's a bit harder to pick out the leitmotif here since it's overshadowed by Tenna's motif, but it's still included nonetheless. This is a dark world that's cool and mysterious and doesn't threaten the world, I guess, and allows Ralsei to walk between dark worlds without getting turned into stone for some reason, and has all of our allies up to this point, so it was about time this leitmotif showed up here. Maybe I'm crazy, but there's something strangely nice about how this motif shows up in the castle town now. We've come a long way making this empty town feel like a home for the Darkners across the different chapters, and so far, it's starting to feel like a real community. Our special place, full of our friends in the dark. Oh, hi religious themes, I was wondering where you went. It's kinda refreshing to see this leitmotif come back in a central area again, since we haven't really had that since Chapter 1. Heh. This chapter seems like the most physically dark, so it makes sense why we're return of form for the motif being here. Also, him sets us up to expect this leitmotif to be spun in a more religious direction this chapter, and boy is it! This track contains the legend leitmotif to the surprise of no one, as well as the sort of chapter's theme which you can find throughout the rest of the church's dark worlds. Beyond that, the only interesting thing of note is how Susie says that she heard Ralsei whistling this track if you try playing this song on the piano, which means that the song is at least somewhat diegetic, which could mean nothing, but considering how important the diegetic tracks tend to be in Deltarune, I think it also hints a bit at how Ralsei knows more than he lets on. Wow, fun battle remix of the main area song. Time to move up. Actually, this track has quite a bit for us to chew on. First of all, this might be the track to replace Rudebuster. It says Battle 2 in parentheses in the title, and since we don't exactly have a Battle 1, I think it's safe to assume that Battle 1 would be Rudebuster. The track is still fun and upbeat, but I think it carries a maturity to it that Rudebuster lacked. There's a Don't Forget leitmotif, of course, I mean, our friends are fighting by our side after all, which weaves its way into more serious tracks, and the song makes the battle feel less like fights with fun gags and more like an actual battle now. There is more at stake at this point in the game, with Undyne's kidnapping, the knight finally showing up in person, the shadow mantle reveal, and fear that the church choir may be stuck inside a dark fountain, and so on. It makes sense that all the weight of this is felt in every aspect of the game. With Chapter 3 giving us 2 other variants of Rudebuster, it feels like a nice send-off to the battle theme that I've come to love so much. And of course, the title itself prompts some interesting questions. From now on, does it mean that this is our battle theme going forward? From now on, someone is with us in the dark? I'm not quite sure why this title was picked for this song, but we did have to wait literally 10 years to find out where else it was raining, so I'm sure it'll be worth the wait. Nothing too crazy with this one. Dark Sanctuary theme paired with the Don't Forget one. The only real noticeable difference is that the last 2 notes of Don't Forget have been prematurely hacked off. Damn. Ah well. Friends with us in the dark, elevating us to victory. What was that? Wait, let's go back. Oh, you've gotta be kidding me. Once upon a time, what are you doing here? It's not a very in-your-face quote of the song either. I mean, we fell down at the start of the church's dark worlds, I guess. Fuck if I know what's happening, man. I guess something worth saying, though, is how You Can Always Come Home also quotes Once Upon a Time, so that's interesting. There aren't too terribly many songs in our lineup that feature an excerpt from an Undertale song, so it just makes the other ones that do stick out even more. Like most people, I found this scene to be quite touching. Being unable to play the piano for the first 3 chapters, then ripping their soul out to play a piano in the light world, and then again in the dark world, but this time with us still left in, is really fascinating to me. It feels a lot like Kris is trying to exercise their will the longer this possession goes on. If you liked my last video's conclusion about the leitmotif being Kris's theme of sorts, it fits nicely here, but it could also show that Kris, in a way, is also fighting with us in the dark. They do put us back in themselves every time they pull us out, so there must be something Kris has to gain from us controlling them. But in any case, there's something nice about the leitmotif reappearing in this really touching moment. Oh boy, now we're cooking. First of all, no, we are not going to talk about the time signatures. I didn't know you could do a 23/8 time signature, and now I'm fearful for my life. Besides that, there is a decent amount going on in the shortened and higher-pitched version of the third sanctuary, so let's get into that. The leitmotif appears here subtly again, but interestingly enough, it appears in this track, but not the third sanctuary. I can't help but feel that this is directly tied to how Susie made this fountain, rather than the Roaring Knight. We know that the Knight and Kris are in cahoots somehow, but since the Knight doesn't have the Don't Forget leitmotif in something like Black Knife or any of the secret boss stuff, and Friends does from earlier in this chapter, which is associated with Susie, I'm gonna place my bets on that being why the motif is here, but not in the next fountain. Susie made this fountain, and the Knight didn't. As usual, the Dark Sanctuary and Legend leitmotifs aren't too far behind, like the Three Musketeers or something, but I think it makes good sense as to why they are here. This is just the Dark Sanctuary put through Yume Nikkiification, and the prophecy is, having playtime right now. It's best if we don't interfere. A lot of Susie's influence really bleeds into this Dark Fountain, which I really enjoy. The way that the previous Dark Fountains got turned on its head, sometimes literally, doesn't surprise me all that much, since Susie does go directly against the prophecy later on. But despite so much of her influence being here, it feels really jarring how this color distortion seems eerily similar to the Snowgrave route cutscene at the beginning of this chapter. I can't really help but wonder if this is prophetic visions of Susie, or Noelle depending on the route. I suppose only time will tell. Not to be confused with the Dark Zone, this song is kind of like Chapter 2's The Dark Truth. I mean, it basically is the same track, but arranged a little differently and sped up. With the foreshadowing The Dark Truth setup, it feels like a teaser as to what the roaring would be like. It's kind of a fun callback, if you can call it that, but ultimately there's nothing new we can get from it. Hey guys, I wonder if someone's with us in the This song is basically a mashup of Heavy Footsteps and Dark Sanctuary, made to sound intense and scary for this point in the game. The second thirdish of this song sounds more hopeful, like our heroes really do have a chance at beating whatever lays ahead. But I mean, hey, the power of friendship and all that. I'd be disappointed if the leitmotif didn't show up here. Oh, this is like the Crumbling Tower's scary older brother. Banger. Guardian especially draws my interest since it's not called Titan or the Roaring, it's protecting something. The easy answer is that the Knight, since they opened up multiple fountains simultaneously, when it seemed like they were backed into a corner. If they really wanted to cause the Roaring though, they most definitely would have a long time ago, so I feel like this is all an extreme last resort on this part to keep Kris, Relzy, and Susie away from them, and whatever they're planning. Of course, the Titan could also be guarding the large fountain that summoned them. Perhaps it's both. This song designates the end of our Don't Forget leitmotif journey for now, and the halfway point in our overall Deltarune journey. Functionally, the song worked with how the original Don't Forget and Until Next Time does, but it feels a little different now, doesn't it? The mysterious voice from Chapter 1, which helped us make our vessel and pushes us to keep going after we die, which also appears in Chapter 3 to help us after we die to the Roaring Knight, speaks to us here again. The validation from this voice is nice, honestly. Chapter 4 was fun, but a really long one compared to the others, which kind of made me smack my head against my screen near the end, so the encouragement felt all the more sweet. Kind of a fun thing, you can sing "With Hope Crossed on Our Hearts" in place of "I'm with you in the dark," and it fits just fine. I think it also fits in well with the theme of rewriting the prophecy and making it your own. And with that, we're done with all of our new tracks for the Don't Forget leitmotif. That I could find. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, of course. Only a year more, and hopefully we'll have some new tracks to analyze and tell us more about our lovely main roster of characters and the secrets they keep. Unlike part 1, I don't have a big bang to end on in terms of cool new theories that the evidence all points to. My guess of this being Kris's theme now seems muddy. With exactly 0 songs that feature the leitmotif being added in Chapter 3, and Noelle and even the Knight not having it in their songs, which we know that Kris has clear connections to both, I can't help but second guess my original theory now. Unfortunately, this might be one of those times where we'll just have to wait and see for what the future will hold, as tired of saying that as I've become. If y'all want to place your bets, though, for Chapter 5, mine are getting a stronger Don't Forget and Lost Girl connection, which will solidify whatever the Kris and the Knight are up to, and that this track will appear more when things seem scary with no end in sight. There'll always be friends with us in the dark. Hey, thanks for watching. I should have already made an explanation for why this video took a while elsewhere, so I'll spare your ears from hearing about it. I have a new mic now, and some swanky new sprites, which I'm quite happy with. Do you guys like them? I feel like it was about time for some upgrades around here. So, since I hopefully have most of you here still, this video should be out before YouTube rolls out its new AI crap, which will flag people if they think are under the age of 18, which the rollout is on August 13th, if you guys didn't hear about it for whatever reason. Since I'm not really that much older than 18 and I don't watch, shall I say, explicit content on this account, there's a chance that I might get flagged, and hell if I'm giving this website my ID or credit card information or anything of the sort. If I do get flagged, then this might be the end of posting on my channel, or at least until everything's undone. I haven't found any good alternatives to YouTube, so if anything happens, I'll try to keep you all updated the best I can, and probably move over to exclusive posting on Patreon. I'll do a tier for my art and a tier for my videos, and I'll just make it $1. Does that sound okay with you all as a backup if this all goes down in flames? I'm open to other suggestions as well, but I'm kind of a little bit low on my options here. If you enjoyed this video, please like it or tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Analyzing and theorizing about games is always most fun as a community. If you want another free activity that'll help us both out, you could always subscribe to my channel, assuming that it'll still be okay in these coming days. Well, that's all for me for now. I'll see you sometime in the future, wherever that is. Bye!